So my understanding of this world and how it all came about and why it's here, I can give you a picture, and it's going to take a while for me to explain this theory. Maybe it'll make sense, maybe it'll make no sense. Maybe you've heard of other people who have a similar perspective. I don't know. But the way in which I understand it and how this all came about to be the way that it is today, and why I also believe that it's not changing, and the only way to change it will be to take yourself completely out of it. Completely out of it. If we can think that in the beginning there was nothing, absolutely nothing, there was just being. There was just being. And original thought occurred. And from that original thought, something began to be created. Everything comes from original thought. And that original thought then split into various things, and everything was formed in all of creation through that, and us included. We are also an aspect of original thought, and we still have that original thought within ourselves. But that thought split into various things, and one of those things that it split into had a realization that it could have power and it could play with others. And that is where I believe the idea of God consciousness came from and formulated itself on this planet. It didn't come from anything other than something wanting to play out its original thoughts and its experiment. And that's what we are. We feed that God concept. And that God concept has gotten strengthened through millennia of existence and maybe millions of years of existence. So perhaps there was original thought that brought different tribes to the earth and different ways that people lived in harmony and in peace before things happened where things started turning dark. Maybe people lived from a non-duality space where everything was the space of love, where there was that oneness. And I think, what is the thing that draws you the most to Avatar, that movie, the Blue People movie, is their oneness with their environment and with one another, this respect. But I think that I see it as it was much softer, and it only needed to trust. It didn't need anything else. And along came this energy. And how could this energy keep things coming here for it to start getting its feed and its fuel? And the only way that it could do that was to entrap, and to entrap the beings that were here having a very pure experience. And it could entrap those beings in multiple different ways. It could have entrapped beings through dreams. It could have entrapped beings through enormous amounts of fear. And it could have entrapped beings after beings died, and more so after beings died, because that was when the ego became a normal part of human existence. Before that, there was only love. That is our true nature. It is the nature of all of us. And when the ego got put into us, duality was created. And that duality took us away from our true nature. And first, people went into another non-duality of pure suffering. And there are a lot of people on this planet that still live in that pure suffering. And the God consciousness just kept strengthening itself, because more and more beings started believing in it. It started making promises to all sorts of beings that came onto the earth or died, and said, well, you can have all the power you want. You can choose this, you can choose that, you can have all these different things, and started making it look very appealing to certain people. And then these people came and had a different kind of purpose. All of a sudden was born, and that purpose became to dominate. That purpose became to control. That purpose became power and greed. And love was just thrown away. And all the people that kept coming back were coming back under a contract, which they had all agreed to. All of us have agreed to what is happening on this earth. All of us have agreed to what is happening in our own lives. But we were unconscious to it. We didn't understand the bigger picture yet. Nobody, I think, did. Some people did. Some people do. But most people don't. Most people just keep coming back blindly and getting more and more bound to different kinds of contracts which keep them coming back. And those contracts bind you through lifetimes, through millennia, actually, and through lifetimes on the planet. Those contracts can bind you to other people. You might make contracts to people that you've been in contact with in this life. Those contracts might bind you to beings who are past. And then all these different matrices began to form because that strengthened the bond to the God consciousness, and it strengthened the God consciousness. It made it more powerful. It made it stronger. The more people that believed in it, the more people that identified with it, the bigger and stronger it became. And so it became easy to form these sub matrices, which again could keep people utterly controlled and asleep. And that is where religions come from. It's where different politics comes from. It's where different ideologies of society and cultures and rituals and all these kinds of things come from. Education. These are all just different forms of matrices which bind people to this planet through their identification with that thing. So if you can say that there's one God consciousness, then I could say that there are multiple sub-God consciousnesses, as well as multiple sub-God consciousnesses. And that's where deities and angels and entities of that sort come into play. Now, the other shocker of all this is that fear is the main control mechanism through the ego. Fear is the main control mechanism through all of us. That identification in something that's so strong makes it real. Your fear of something makes it as real as it can possibly be, even if that thing doesn't exist. You created that existence of it by fearing it, which means that in order for God consciousness at the top to absolutely thrive and be completely strong, how do you control people? Through fear. So if you give them that duality, that there is a good and there's a bad, the bad things exist and good things exist, and they are afraid of the bad thing, that gives them more strength in the good thing. So I believe that evil and light, in how it's taught from spiritual and religious terms, are exactly the same thing, because one can't survive without the other. That is what duality is. Whatever you give power to through your fear, through your beliefs, through whatever thing that is, you strengthen that thing. And you cannot have one without the other when it comes to religion. Because what would be the point? If people didn't have something to fear, they wouldn't believe in that good thing. And even if they feared that good thing, what would be the consequences of not fearing it? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? So I very strongly believe that evil and good are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And the other thing that I find very fascinating about that is that both sides are always harvesting souls, good and bad, both harvesting souls. Our soul is always up for grabs, and we fear the loss of our soul so deeply because why? The ego is so strongly identified with our soul. And that is where I'm going to stop this one and start another one.